After years of saving, some epic gains from our Tesla shares, and a little bit of luck, we're finally able to move here, our dream house. And it's been pretty amazing because it has enough room for us as a family to grow up with our kids, and even has a place for us to run our YouTube channel. But there's one big problem: this. Now, while we wanted a pool because of epic outdoor activities and parties and stuff, they are expensive. And as a result, our electric bill is absolutely through the roof. The first month we lived here, we were heating it, and between the gas and electric, we paid $1,000 in 1 month for electricity and gas. We stopped heating the pool, which helped, but our electric prices were still really high, and we figured out why that is. When we moved in here, I asked the pool people, what should I do to keep this pool clean? And they said, run the pump for 7 hours a day. But here's the problem: that pump runs on 2,000 watts, and as a result, that was consuming about 340 kilowatt hours a month, which was almost a third of our entire energy usage. But I think I figured out the answer, and it is this. This is the Dolphin Sigma Wi-Fi enabled smart pool cleaning robot. This video is not sponsored. We bought this with our own money. But I want to tell you how this is saving us about 200 kilowatt hours a month, or about $80 to $100 on our electric bills. Previously, we had one of these. This is a suction-based pool cleaning unit. It plugs into a port right there, and it requires the pump to be running to operate. So just with the vacuum suction, it crawls around and kind of cleans up the algae and stuff on the ground, but it did a terrible job. And even after 5 months of running it for 7 hours a day, the pool never looked particularly clean. And just after one session with the new robot, the pool looked better than it ever did before. And as a result now, we only have to run this pump for 2 hours a day, saving us about 200 kilowatt hours of electricity. Now, we do still need the pump. Let me tell you why. So this is our pool pump system. This is a water heater, natural gas. We're gonna replace that. And this here is the pump system. The first thing you can do if you wanna have better energy usage is get a variable speed pump. This is a fixed speed. Like I mentioned, it runs on between 1,800 and 2,000 watts when it runs. This is the water filter, and this is why we actually still have to run this pool. This pool is a saltwater pool, which means you don't ever have to add chlorine, because this here, the ProCell, will take the salt in the water, break it down with a little bit of electricity, and introduce free chlorine into the pool. So all you have to do in terms of maintenance is add salt once a year. Other than that, it'll keep the chlorine levels high. So this pool pump still has to run, because without it, we wouldn't have the chlorine, and eventually the pool will just become infested with mosquitoes and algae. And this main pool pump filter still is working for 2 hours a day. Now, the thing with this is it is a nightmare to take apart and clean. It's really heavy. It's under a big vacuum suction. And so taking this big ring off and dealing with this is a headache. And with that pool robot now, I don't really have to mess with this but maybe once a year. And let me tell you why. Because this pool robot does all the filtering and cleaning, and it only uses about 150 watts of electricity to do it. It has 2 of these cartridge filters. These are the higher grade, more fine particle filters. The first time we ran this, it was completely covered in algae. And after the second or third time, I mean, you can see the pool, it looks pretty fantastic. There's a couple of areas where I think it needs to hit on its next run, but cleaning this out is maybe a 1-minute job instead of 2-3 hours for that other thing. So cleaning it out is as simple as a couple of clips and removing these, taking a hose, spraying it down, and putting it all back together. I could do it in about a minute or 2. And the system has a total of 2 of them. One here as well. The first time we ran this system, it was filthy. It was completely covered in algae. But after that, we found all I have to do is clean it out maybe once a week. So it has a schedule, and we just have it clean every morning for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and once a week we got to clean it out. So between the energy savings and just the ease of use, this thing has completely changed how our pool looks and how easy it is to operate. This, as I mentioned, this is a Wi-Fi system. So here is the base unit. Electricity comes out of here, and that's where it communicates and provides power to the system. But this has Wi-Fi. Now, the first thing I'll tell you is if you have one of these and they're outside, You have to figure out where your Wi-Fi router is because it does need Wi-Fi, and currently it kind of is at the edge of connectivity. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get a Wi-Fi mesh access point closer down here to provide Wi-Fi for it. But while it's all powered, you can set up schedules, have it clean every day. And this thing even has a remote control mode where you can actually move it around like a rover on the moon and like clean up spots, for example, if there's like an area in your pool where there's especially large amounts of debris. So like I mentioned, the pool looks pretty great and it saves us a ton of money. But that's just visually. How about the data? Well, we take our water samples at Leslie's Pool. Again, not a sponsor, but they have a great system where you can bring in water and they'll track your data over time. So when we first moved into this house, the phosphate levels, which is an indication of how much algae there is, was out of control. The entire pool was kind of a green color. To combat the algae, there's chemicals you can add called no-phos, which basically kills all the algae and then has it suck up into the main filter. Now this did work, but again, that filter was completely clogged with green algae that we had to clean out. It took me like 2-3 hours to do that. But the problem was about a month later, the phosphate levels rose again. So this is a constant battle. And this is what I was afraid of with pools. I was thinking this is gonna be a constant chemical test and check. But since I got this robot, for 2 complete sessions now, the phosphate levels have been 0. And we've had to add no chemicals to it. And that's what I want. I want an ecosystem that stays healthy with minimal intervention. It's already a saltwater pool. It already creates chlorine. So what else do we really need to do? Well, with this, not a whole lot. The one chemical we do still need to add is a conditioner, which basically is cyanuric acid, and it keeps the chlorine levels in the water. As the sun hits the water, it will make the chlorine evaporate off. And that acid holds onto it better and keeps your chlorine levels higher. I should also mention, because we cut the pump run from 7 hours to 2 hours, we had to increase the chlorine generation of that cell. Before it was around 25%, and now we're closer to 80%. That way we can create enough chlorine in just the 2 hours that it runs now. Not only does it save you time and money, it'll pay for itself and give you a better result than ever before. That is the win-win-win combination. Now I should probably mention about price. I kind of got crazy and I got the highest end system I could find. Again, I mentioned this is Wi-Fi enabled, so it has all these kind of cool connectivity and gadgetry and stuff. And as a result, this was $1,400. Now I just checked Amazon today, and now the same thing is $1,800. I have no idea why, but it has gone up $400 in price. And at that point, that's just absurd. But I think honestly, you could get any one of these electric powered robots, even for a couple of $100, and you'll be way better off than before. Now, if it doesn't have all the smart stuff and navigation abilities, you might have areas that it doesn't quite clean every time. Just run it more frequently. Make it run 2 or 3 times a day when you're not using it. And I think you'll be fine. This isn't really a review of this particular brand, but this is a video about reimagining how we do things. I wanted a beautiful, clean pool that was able to run every day, whenever I wanted. But I didn't want to have to spend $100 a month just on electricity to make that happen, and now I don't have to. There's also one more thing I should mention about not running that pump as often. I have a solar water heater, and that only operates when the pump is running. So my heating now is reduced for this, but that isn't a big concern for me because my system is really old and leaking, and it drives me crazy because I have salt water leaking on my roof. So I'm gonna rip that entire thing out and go full solar. And I think what I'll do is get rid of the natural gas heater and get a heat pump heater instead, and maybe have it run at certain times of the day. But here in San Diego, for about 7 months, I would imagine we could use this pool without any sort of heating. It's really only the other parts of the year where it really matters. Because the reality is, even in winter here in San Diego, if the pool was warm, you could go swimming. It's not crazy because you'll have 70-degree days even in December and January. So depending on where you live, you have to keep that in mind as well. So I'll wrap this up by just saying this. You can have the house that you want. You could go a little lavish, get a bigger place, and there's still things you can do to save on energy. One of the first things, of course, is just reduce your consumption. And this is a perfect example. This does 10 times the job my previous system did, and it does it with 200 kilowatt hours less of energy. The same goes for a lot of the things in our houses. Get LED light bulbs, for example. Get better insulation in the attic and in your walls. There's a whole slew of things, and we want to cover all of that on this channel. We are building an Earthship. So our goal is to make this house entirely off-grid. We're going to have tons of solar production. We're going to have batteries. Stay tuned for that. That's coming soon. And we're also going to have rain capture. We're going to have gray water capture from the showers, for example, to irrigate our crops and our lawn. And eventually, I would love to even have an air to water system where it's like an atmospheric water generator and build that out. So that's all coming in the future months. But this is going to take a long time and it's not going to be cheap. But I'm hoping that all the lessons that we learned, we can share with you and tell you what's worth it and what isn't. For example, get an electric powered pool robot. That is worth it. You don't have to go crazy and get the Wi-Fi and all the other stuff. They make these for as little as like $200 or $300 if you wanted. Now, I've never tried one of those. Try it out. You can always return it if you don't love it. And like I mentioned, you can run it more frequently because if it doesn't have the smarts, you might need to. But this is the sort of thing that we want to cover on this channel. So if that sounds good, subscribe and we'll catch you guys soon.